You don't have to be a star baby. You don't have to be a star baby to be on my show. You don't have to be a star baby, but you better be bold. Yeah! Shake your pom poms, shake your pom poms, shake my pom poms tonight. And of course, tonight, listen, you are in tune to the Little Hut podcast. Welcome inside the hut. Of course, you got Brown, 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 that damn Brown on Cleveland. Wednesday night, and I am excited because we have some more issues coming out of East Cleveland, Ohio. But before we do that, of course, I got to say hello to my favorite girls out there. Don't forget that if you're looking for a single home, or commercial property, please call Aletha Johnson of Dream Team Realty at 216-375-3681. Or if you're looking for t-shirts, hoodies, jackets, tumblers, cups, mugs, team uniforms, whatever the case may be, call my girl Angie Marie of New Beginnings 1111 in the city of Maple Heights at 216-395-7335 and let them know that Kimberly F. Brown, Brown on Cleveland, told you to call. Yeah! Listen, you guys, for the last two, maybe 2.5 weeks, we've been having some conversations regarding the city of East Cleveland. So tonight is another chapter in the city. Now, we know about the fallout and we know about the rise and fall, maybe, of the illegal or legal interim appointed mayor. Again, imagine a small city grappling for challenges and being rocked by a scandal. Is this a scandal? Is this on purpose? Or is it, as some people would say, it is what it is, and good politics or dirty politics? Well, I don't know. But tonight, I have one of the most interesting investigative reporters hanging out with me. He was also a former mayor of East Cleveland. Please help me welcome tonight Mr. Eric Brewer inside the Little Hut podcast. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you. It's good to be here.
Very good. Before we get started, because I really want to dive into this, how are you, sir?
I'm doing fine. I'm old now. I'm getting older and hoping to get even older. So it's been a long journey being in this town and observing a lot of historical events
Hmm.
and knowing some of the players who are here who are no longer here and
Okay.
remembering some of the institutions that existed that no longer exist. And then having that long perspective and then that hope for East Cleveland that just never seemed to materialize for the city because of the choices that it's made. So it's been a long, very long journey, and it's a sad one to see that the city is still, after all of these years, not getting it right.
Now, before we get into the nooks and crannies of this, uh, Eric, if people don't know you, but I think they do know you, but they really don't know you, give me some insight regarding your political background from whence you came to where you are. If you can sum that up in about 2 minutes so we can get right down to business inside the hut. Thank you.
No worries, no worries.
Mhm.
I'm born in Cleveland, raised in East St. Louis, Illinois. Moved back to Cleveland in '69. Attended several schools here. Shaw was my final resting school. I went into the
Okay.
military, came back, worked
Mhm.
for Bill Walker at the Call and Post, and worked for the Cleveland Press. Organized Guardian Angels, hosted radio shows, served as mayor, worked as the chief of communications for CMHA. Worked for Mike White as a special assistant, Anwar as chief of staff. And then I've published newspapers throughout the years,
Okay.
in addition to being involved in politics. And I've really focused a lot over the most recent years on my website, ejbnews.com, where I go into a lot of issues about local issues, international issues, following trends that most people don't follow,
Mhm.
with a perspective that most people don't dig into. I'm the guy that'll go back and look at the first immigration law that Congress passed in 1790. That's
Very
just
good.
the
And
way I.
also, to for people who don't know, when I first started the Brown Report newspaper, let me give homage to you right now. You're the person who named the Brown Report. So the title of the Brown Report newspaper actually came from Eric Brewer. The
Yes,
thought of me establishing the Brown Report newspaper comes from Eric Brewer. So I just wanted to put that out there because we do have history.
we
But
have history, and I'm going to say this, Kim. You have always been a star pupil.
thank you
Very
very
good
much.
work. Very good work. I love the way you've been rolling,
Thank
the
you
way
very much.
you've been showing it, the professionalism and the commitment that you've shown. I truly appreciate watching you.
Thank you very much. So let's get right down to business.
Okay.
Let's talk your former city, the city of East Cleveland. We know that Sandra Morgan, right now, is the interim mayor. We also know that Mariah Crenshaw has been talking about this issue, and Mariah Crenshaw is the CEO of Chasing Justice. We also know that Cassandra McDonald has weighed in, and Cassandra is a legal law and policy analyst, right? But now I want the third opinion. What do you think about the appointment, legal or illegal, regarding Sandra Morgan inside the hut? Thank you.
Well, I'm not going to get into the legality or the
Okay.
illegality of it all, but what I will do is say that the Charter of East Cleveland provides for a transition from a mayor who is removed from office, suspended from office, and that transition goes from that mayor to the president of council. The reason that you do that is because you've got somebody on that in that job who's at least got some familiarity with the issues that the city has been dealing with on a regular basis. With all due respect to Sandra, she served on the State Financial Planning and Supervision Commission, and she's done that for the last several years. But the State Financial Planning and Supervision Commission does not get a micro or macro look at East Cleveland. She doesn't attend council meetings. She doesn't really know the charter. She doesn't work with the charter. She works with a different group of laws. So the things that she would know, she's literally a person fresh off the streets who's walked into a very complex job that she really didn't prepare for. It's a disadvantage for her. And I think it's more troublesome for someone like her because in reality, she's walked into an ongoing criminal investigation. There are multiple agencies that are investigating East Cleveland. You have the
Okay.
FBI, you have the Cuyahoga County Prosecuting Attorney, you have the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, you have the U.S. Department of Treasury. They're looking into the ARPA money. You have HUD's Inspector General looking at misappropriations of block grant funds. She's walked into all of that, and the criminal apparatus that Brandon, Michael Smedley, Willie Hemmons, Heather McCullough, Ken Lundy, the chief of police, acting chief of police, have put in place is still there. And she walked smack dab into the middle of it. It's a very precarious situation for someone off the streets, which is why the charter says that the council president moves in, because whether or not they know all the details and the minutia, they at least have some familiarity with all of those issues that I outlined to you.
So, with that being said, Mr. Brewer, why would, if you can answer this, why would Judge Anthony Russo make an outside appointment rather than an internal appointment like the council president, Brown on Cleveland?
That's an interesting question. And part of it could be power tripping, part of it could be judicial overreach. I don't know that he really understood what he was doing. And I'm telling you from experience and covering a number of elected officials over the years that many people just don't read when they hold elected office. They don't read all of the governing documents. You know, they swear to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. They haven't read the Constitution of the state of Ohio. They haven't read the laws of the United States, the laws of the state, and the duties of their job they haven't read. Article 1, Section 15 of the Constitution of Ohio deals with suspension of laws, and it says that there shall be no suspension of laws but for the General Assembly. And a judge under Canon 1 of the judicial canons must comply with the law. And the law is that the Charter of East Cleveland, a home rule city, establishes who shall be the mayor that replaces a mayor, in this case, who's been indicted and has been suspended from performing the duties of his elected office. And the judge doesn't have any authority to go beyond that. He's exercised authority that doesn't exist for him, and I think it's troublesome because it also, here's another problem. It took him
Mm-hmm.
forever, and it took the Supreme Court forever. Brandon was indicted in October. He wasn't
Okay.
removed until February. This man should have been removed sometime in November instead of waiting all of this time, giving him continued access to the city's finances, the employees, and then all the things that he did not do that he was already derelict in not doing. He didn't have a budget for council to pass. The city began the year without a budget. At the last minute, he's trying to spend money that he had no business and no authority to spend, but he was spending it because he still had control because the judge and the Supreme Court were delaying the final decision just to put the council president in place. If this had been done in November, a lot of things that did happen that should not have happened would not have continued to happen.
Well, Mr. Brewer, I am going to disagree with you. You're stating that a lot of things should have been done or could have been done prior to the indictment. I remember
No,
it
no,
had
no,
been
no, no. I'm saying that after he was indicted on
after
October
it was done.
10th,
Okay.
that the law that says that Brandon should have been suspended is supposed to be a quick process.
Okay, I'm still going to disagree with you. So let me take you back down memory lane. There was a hearing regarding Mayor King's place of residence, and it was at the Board of Elections.
I took him to the Board of Elections, and I'm the one
And
who filed the
there
count
were there were
on the president.
photos that showed a home that was boarded in the front,
Yep,
boarded on the side, and boarded in the back.
I took those
And
pictures.
and had the Board of Elections done what they should have done, maybe we wouldn't be at this standpoint right now. So I know you said about, the Supreme Court, you know, being a little lax and taking their time, but there were things that apparently that was going on way before this time.
So I'll give you an example. I started March 13th officially. I was sworn in March 12th. And on April 6th, I put a criminal complaint together for council,
Okay.
and it charged both Brandon and the finance director with dereliction of duty, theft in office, obstruction of official business, etc., because council had not appropriated any money for Brandon to lease office space to the city. And the finance director should not have been making office space payments to Brandon, as well as paying his American merchandising company for office supplies and other materials that he was selling to the city. So
Okay.
council filed a criminal complaint. Charles Ian, that was on April 6th. Charles Ian resigned on April 10th. That was in 2023. And then in May, went to the Board of Elections because he didn't live in the city, and
Hmm.
mayors are required to live in the city. And he hired a private attorney with city money to represent himself, his mother, his wife, and two brothers at the Board of Elections. I got 4 of their voter registrations canceled. His prevailed because of the Board of Elections. But you could see the pattern of criminal activity that had already existed. Even before then, he had given Ernest Smith a car to use that he had no authority to give a member of city council to use, and paid for the gas, paid for the repairs. And it wasn't just one car, it was 3 cars. They both have been indicted for it. And when we sought to use that information with the probate court, the same probate court that Judge Russo is a member over, when we went to the probate court to get Brandon removed from office under another law back in March of 2024, the probate court didn't proceed with it. And we went back a second time and they didn't proceed with it. So now all of a sudden, the same court that could have taken him out last year is now putting someone else in place who has no business there. And she may be a nice lady. She may be a good quality person. I've heard good things about her from
Hmm.
people who know her. So I don't have any problems with her being there. If she ran and won and became the mayor that way, that would be the way that
That would
she
be
should get the job. But this judge who didn't know anything about East Cleveland, didn't know the budget, didn't know the charter, didn't review the charter before he made a decision, didn't sit down and study some of the issues that the city was dealing with in the immediacy to see if she would even be sensitive to them. The budget has to be done. There was no budget at the beginning of the year. It has to be done by the end of the month. There are certain steps in section 60 of the charter, A through M, that a mayor must do that hasn't been done since Brandon's been mayor. She doesn't know that. The people there can't guide her to do that. And in fact, this week, Willie Hemmons, who should have been removed a long time ago, who might as well be an attorney for the mafia. It's like she's the Goodfellas attorney, okay, an organized crime attorney. She's not an ethical person. But Willie Hemmons is trying to have a budget meeting this Friday at 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the residents are at work. This is the insanity that's been taking place over there. And poor Sandra, again, nice lady, but she doesn't know Rule 1 of Council's Rules of Order and Ordinance number 103.01 that tells how meetings for the city, special meetings, are to be scheduled and when. And they're supposed to be at 6:30 p.m. That's what it says in the ordinances. So that's something that somebody, again, off the streets just wouldn't know. She wouldn't know when she swore in 4 police officers, as Mariah pointed out, that they hadn't taken civil service tests, that they have no OPATA training, and that the chief of police is really not a civil service chief of police. He was appointed to an acting position over a year ago, and you can only stay in that position by law for 180 days. But all of these acts are taking place right under her nose, and the council is familiar with them, sensitive to them, but a person off the streets would not be sensitive to these issues.
Got it. People are telling me, and I even watched the press conference today that was held by Chase and Justice, and they're saying that this issue is in front of the Ohio Supreme Court.
Yes.
Your opinion about what may happen? What are the possibilities and probabilities that this may be overturned? Any thought, Eric Brewer?
Well, I would think that since I had a chance to read the pleading that attorney Ken Myers put together for
Hmm.
Latik Shabazz before the judge made his decision, so the
Okay.
Supreme Court was asked to tell the judge to appoint Latik because he was the rightful office holder, and the judge chose a different path. He didn't brief it himself. He had the prosecutor's office brief it for him, since the prosecutor represents the officials of the county. So the prosecutor briefed it for him. And when I read her brief, she did say that the judge still had the option of appointing the council president. We needed to wait and see what he did. Well, now that we've seen what he did, he has no legal basis, no legal grounds to stand on it. He should have just appointed Latik Shabazz, the council president, and moved on so the city could move on. This delay that he had, waiting all of these extra weeks and going through this resume process, just opened up the door for a lot of craziness. And it just hurts the city even more because the city right now has impending deadlines in addition to all of those investigations that the officials have to wrestle with.
Well, just so you know, if you don't know, Mr. Shabazz, he will be on the Little Hut podcast, Inside the Hut, on Friday at 10 p.m. So we will definitely hear from him. And I also, out of due diligence and because of the journalist that I am, also extended an invite to interim mayor Sandra Morgan. And as of this moment, I've not heard anything from her. But I hope to hear something from her tomorrow. And if I do, she's invited to come on Wednesday because it's not a forum, it's not a debate, it's just to hear. East Cleveland residents need to hear and understand what's going on. So that's something that's up and forthcoming. Anything else regarding this issue? Because there's something else I want to talk to you about politics in general. You know, because the city of Cleveland, we have an election forthcoming. But anything else regarding this issue?
Well, I guess one of the big pieces of news for East Cleveland right now is this indictment of Michael Smedley and
Oh,
the Al Zubair brothers, and the fact that Michael was asking the Al Zubair brothers to for bribes of about $250,000 a year on top of what he said was a $110,000 a year salary. It's a 69-page indictment, and Mike starts off at, I think, at the 148th charge, but he goes from there all the way to the end. And it's just quite interesting seeing the scandal that was taking place. Just imagine two foreign investors want to invest $10 million in a cryptocurrency mining operation at Nela Park that neither of the brothers own. And the mayor, Smedley, Willie Hemmons, Heather McCullough, they participate in a scam to convince these people that these two fake Dubai royalty brothers, whose father used to work at the Martin Luther King Civic Center in East Cleveland. They were educated at an Islamic school on St. Clair. They're not Dubai royalty. They're homeboys from this part of the world.
Oh,
Okay. And, you know, the idea that they convinced these two investors to give them $10 million, and you've got Smedley and Brandon setting up signing ceremonies in the mayor's office, giving these guys fake police badges, creating business cards and titles that says they're the international economic advisors to the mayor, and then telling the investors that they did actually have site control over GE, knowing they did not have site control over GE, knowing that they were scamming those women out of $10 million. It's horrible that this is taking place. Smedley's trial is coming up on the 17th of
okay.
April, and I'm praying for his conviction. That man belongs not only behind the bars, he belongs under the damn jail. This has been a
Wow.
horrible situation for the residents of East Cleveland. The Noble Road dump is a Brandon Michael
Mhm.
Smedley gift over there with all of those toxins in that construction and demolition debris dump. 5,000 cars were towed because of Michael and Brandon during the pandemic when the state placed a moratorium on individuals with expired license plates. They were sending the police and cuffing towing into people's driveways so they could charge them $280 to get their cars back. And if they didn't pay for it, they liquidated the cars without even going before council, without those people getting a ticket, and the judge ordering the car to be confiscated, taken from that person. There's just been horrible things that have been taking place. There are individuals that ARPA money, $26 million in ARPA money, that
Mhm.
money wasn't spent on food insecurity, on a health clinic, on doing any of the things that needed to be done, buying a fire truck for the city. It was spent. Brandon gave it to the residents in $3,000 chunks and $300 chunks. He went up and down streets in the Forest Hill section and just gave literally every household on that street a $3,000 stimulus with ARPA money. You see no benefit to the city with the resources that have been invested in that city over the years. Look at what's going on with the
Wait,
fact.
wait, 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 wait. See, I gotta back up for a second. Now, you just talked about the ARPA money, and if I heard you correct, you stated that he gave homeowners up on Forest Hill $3,000 apiece.
Glen, Oak Hill, Mount Vernon, just go up and down the streets and he's up in the Forest Hill section. There's a whole list of homeowners up there who got $3,000 stimuluses, as Brandon called it, and then he gave people who lived in apartments $300. And none of it was approved by City Council. None of it was authorized in the American Rescue Plan Act. It wasn't an allowable expense. It didn't benefit the city. Look at $26 million in the hands of a fool that could have. We don't have, sir, you don't have service trucks in East Cleveland, snowplow equipment. That stuff could have been purchased with that money. He didn't use it for that.
So where's the accountability, the check and balance with council members?
So
Make it
what?
make sense.
So what's been happening? You can't. So here's
Okay,
so here's what's been happening, and I'm just going to be very blunt about it.
please do.
You know, we keep electing people who are not who aren't from here. You know, this whole thing about immigration. You know, listen, I know a lot of people from a lot of different places. Okay, but the guy's a Jamaican immigrant. Okay, and we had a Nigerian immigrant running the city. And in two situations, you've got folks who come from a culture that's not compatible with George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, Abraham Lincoln, and our history here. There's a completely different history, completely different forms of government. They look like us, but they don't think like us. And so we end up with individuals who look at the residence that you talked about. It looks like a Jamaican third world hut house over there on Elsinore. Okay. It's just despicable to think that an American would put that much debris in front of and behind his home and live like that. We don't live like that in the United States of America. We do not allow a Nazi in a Negro community to become a police chief. It would be offensive for an American Negro to allow a Nazi to become a police chief, or an American Negro to allow 24 police officers to terrorize Negro people. That doesn't happen. We don't do that. Somebody from another tribe will do that to us and allow those things to take place with us, which is what's been happening with this guy. He's been stealing from us and enriching himself, enriching members of his family, and he has the audacity to call himself one of us. He ain't like us. Kendrick Lamar is right. They ain't like us. I'm for real on this. It is insidious what we've been allowing to take place, and we've got to put an end to it. And I feel the same way about Vivek Ramaswamy, about Bernie Moreno, about Kamala Harris, about Kash Patel, all of those people. This is the United States of America. You ought to be from here. You ought to have history here. You ought to have skin in the game. You ought to be, if you one of us, your ancestor ought to be a descendant of slaves, just like mine. I'm sick of this mess from these folks coming into this community and raping us like they've been doing. This man's got to go, and he deserves no sympathy, none of the sympathy that you would normally give somebody who's a member of our tribe.
Eric Jonathan Brewer. They say he's one of the baddest investigative reporters on the planet. And now you guys know why. Change the era, change the subject. Mr. Brewer,
Yes, ma'am.
election 2025. Because
Okay.
we're going to pause East Cleveland for now because the Ohio Supreme Court will rule and we'll come back and talk about the ruling.
We will
But
get that.
Cleveland, election 2025. The city of Cleveland, because of population loss, went from 17 to 15 council persons. Your opinion?
So I didn't like, I grew up with 33 members of council,
Okay.
33 wards, and I grew up with council members serving for 2 years and running every 2 years to get the voter approval. The mayor only served for 2 years. That's what we grew up with. And that's the way it was for years. So in the 80s, they wanted these jobs to be full time, and they wanted full time wages because their broke asses couldn't do anything else. And so they needed these jobs, just keeping it real. Okay. I mean, it's the same thing in East Cleveland. You got that little part-time council and people making 20 grand a year. That's the highest paid part-time council in the daggone county. You understand? So in this situation here, we got it's been a downgrade over the
Okay.
years. So I'm one that advocates for more. I think we need to change the charter and go back to partisan elections instead of this nonpartisan stuff, because all we're dealing with is two Democrats facing each other, woke on this side, woke on that side. I mean, it doesn't provide any alternative thinking for what we're dealing with here. And I think this guy who's the current mayor has been he's been a decent kid, but not a very mature or sophisticated mayor. Uh,
Okay.
and I just I can't take him too seriously, because I don't see him as really delving into the charter, the ordinances, and knowing government from a nuanced perspective. And he really hasn't taken the time to master it. He's kind of a showman. He doesn't want to have any questions asked. I don't know that he really
No.
does press conferences. I think what he does is he puts his cell phone in front of himself and whoever he wants to be at a press conference, and he stands there and just talks and asks his own questions. I don't think he's a person who likes to be challenged. I think that he has a limited perspective about the government, about the history of the city. And I've been on his Twitter page from time to time, commenting about some of the things that he's done. And his issues are just not the right issues for Cleveland. He's too woke for Cleveland. His agenda is too immigrant friendly. I think it's problematic that he put a Jamaican immigrant in charge of the safety department, and that he put, and no disrespect to Dornat Drummond, but you know, that ain't his job. I'm just gonna keep it that real. I think he put that Australian girl, Eden Giagnorio, in charge of communications. That was a mistake. I don't even think she had a damn green card. And I think that I'm being that real about it. And I
Okay.
think that he's too caught up in all of that whole wokeism to be someone appointing anybody to the school board. Think about this. This man appointed a Bosnian refugee as the president of the Cleveland School Board. We would never in Cleveland elect a Bosnian refugee to serve on our school board. She couldn't get elected. She couldn't get elected. I think Frank Jackson put the Asian Indian there, Nigamanth Sridhar, but this guy is a visa violator. He showed up as a student and then starts working at Cleveland State University. And I don't see anything in his employment applications where where Cleveland State said, hey, this Indian dude is the best qualified person to be the provost for Cleveland State University. I haven't seen that. And so he's bought into all of that. They have a Confucius Institute at Cleveland State University. He bought into all of that. And what I see going on with the development with, Burke Lakefront Airport, losing the Brown Stadium, the whole thing with, I think the governor made points that he's thinking about residential, but he's not thinking about economic development. I live off Kinsman. There's no new businesses on Kinsman.
No,
I got
not at all.
convenience stores, I got fast food stores, but I got no new stores on Kinsman. Nothing on 131st Street.
My question to you is this. Here's
Nothing
my
on
question to you. Here's my
Wait.
question. Please tell some listeners and voters, why is it that every time election year comes up, the incumbents, they always talk about neighborhood investment. They say that every single election, and they try to focus on road repair. And then for 3 years, you don't see neighborhood investment and you barely see road repair.
Well, actually, you do see neighborhood investment along West
You
25th
do?
Street, along
Oh, no,
Detroit,
no, 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 no. I don't live. Wait. Let me stop you right there. Let me stop you right there. I
Tremont.
live,
Okay.
I live in the Lee Harbor area.
Excuse me.
I
We
I
live
I,
down the
I
street
rare
from each other.
okay.
Okay.
I rarely go to Tremont, Ohio City. So
Mhm.
I'm not talking there. I'm talking us, where I live. I'm
Yeah.
talking about, their mantra. I'm talking about their platform. So that was my question to you.
So let me tell you something.
Brown on Cleveland.
Think about who we were influenced by. Okay. The Carl Stokeses, the W.O. Walkers, the Lou Stokeses, the Charlie Carrs, even the Gene Capers, even Lloyd Brown, Frederick Coleman. I'm going back old school names, okay?
Okay.
George Forbes, for real, okay? Those people did not have a problem saying black. They did not have a problem saying they were looking out for black folks. But you got these new age wokeisms. They deal with immigrants. They deal with a L, a G, a T, a B, a Q. They put all of that in front of us, okay? And they just dilute us. I haven't heard anybody, including Obama, talk about black folks in years. And I don't hear anybody on that council talking about black folks and what we're going to do for the black community. And I still say the Negro community, because the 14th Amendment was about freeing freedmen and making sure that freedmen and women were citizens. That was us. That's our ancestors. That was written for us. Make sure we could vote. Make sure we were citizens. Make sure we could form contracts. Byron Allen sued Charter One or Charter and Comcast, and now is suing McDonald's based on an old ex-slavery law that was enacted for the freedmen by Congress, a right to contract. And he's been winning. We don't go back and have that kind of discussion to see what we're supposed to get and what we're supposed to benefit from. And we don't have leaders that look out for us. They look out for everybody but us. I ain't never heard Justin Bibb talk about nobody black. I ain't never heard him do
Brown
that.
on Cleveland inside the Little Hut podcast. Mr. Brewer,
Yes, ma'am.
whose fault is it?
Whose thought is it?
Whose fault is it? The state that we're in, the state of destruction, whose fault is it?
So
Eric Jonathan Brewer, Brown on
here,
Cleveland.
here's what I would say. I would say that for those of us in the media, it's our fault for a couple of reasons. I grew up
Fair.
in an era. I grew up in an era where we had a plain dealer that had 460,000 papers hitting the streets every day, 340 for the Cleveland Press, about 50 for the Call and Post, about 100 for the Sun newspapers. You had media saturating a community, so you knew who was your mayor, your school board, your judges, your state reps, your state senators. There was more civic involvement. Right now, you have a 7 to 14% voter turnout in Cleveland. There's no way for anybody to really know who is an emerging leader and what the issues are collectively in the community that we should be talking about. There's no way to know who's on the school board in one source because everybody's got their own podcast, their own radio shows, TV shows, websites, Twitter pages, Instagram pages. Media is now disparate. It's not concentrated, and you don't have any monoliths anymore that are able to just reach everybody. If we had between the two papers 1.1 million people, if you recall, when we had the Plain Dealer and the Cleveland Press with 800,000 papers between them, they were at bus stops, they were in classrooms. We talked about current events. Am I correct?
Yes, you
Newspapers
are,
were
but, I,
part of,
but that may be correct partially. That's partly cloudy correct. The fact of the matter is this. Then they were allowed to create the Black narrative. Now you have an open forum where you have stories now that are being told that would have never been told just with two papers. And I simply refuse to allow the plain dealer to tell the narrative of stories that they get wrong all the time. The other thing that bothers me about mainstream media is that when they tell a story, they tell it the same way. When you start looking at podcasts and you start looking at other forms of media, you're getting a whole different creative approach. Mainstream media, as you guys call it, they're missing the mark every single time. Just like the story with East Cleveland. It amazed me how the Little Hut podcast, Brown on Cleveland News Break, we were the first to report the story. Nobody wanted the story. But then when we wrote the story, when we started talking about the story, now you see all of these so-called mainstream media folks, now they're interested in the story. Somebody has to be the leader. And it is the podcast people now who are becoming the true leaders of media. People can disagree all day long, but it's a fact. Brown on Cleveland inside the Little Hut podcast.
so I wouldn't disagree with the fact that there's more media. The one of the
Okay?
problems with the internet, and this is what I experienced with my website. If you recall, I had a website called Cleveland Challenger. And
Correct.
on a daily basis, I was getting about 240 to 50,000 views on my stories.
Mm-hmm.
But when I would check my statistics, my stories were 98%, 97% of my audience was outside the country.
Okay.
Only 3% was inside the country. And I had my website was called Cleveland Challenger. I wasn't trying to reach anybody outside of Cleveland, but I was reaching everybody outside of Cleveland
Mm-hmm.
and not reaching the people in Cleveland that I wanted, which is the fatal flaw with the internet, because you don't have a controlled audience that you have with your newspaper. When you put 30,000 or 100,000 copies of your newspaper out, you know damn well where your papers are going. You know everybody in your community is going to have a copy of that, and you're going to have a message that you can at least make sure is a universal message in one densely concentrated area. You can have an effect with that. You can't do that. Remember when I was on Facebook, I had hundreds of thousands of people going to my Facebook page, and I had hundreds of thousands of people from outside the country getting in on Cleveland conversations. And I was telling them, get the off my page. I don't want to talk to you if you're in Ireland or Scotland or Australia. This
Right.
ain't your business. Okay. So for me, that's the main problem with the media today. We need to get back to a hyper local model where we can reach as many people as we can. Think about this, Kim. There's only 4 printing presses that print newspapers left in the state of Ohio. Where are you getting your paper printed? Outside the state?
Sandusky? No, no, I get mine Sandusky. This is where I go.
Okay, you go to Sandusky?
Yes.
Okay, okay. What's in Sandusky? Who's there?
I'm
Oh,
not telling you, but that's
I
where I
know, I
go.
know exactly who. Yeah, because I sent some people there. I know you
Right.
talking about. Okay,
Okay.
and they're one of the 4. They're one of the 4.
Right.
You know, I was going to the Warren Tribune. They shut their press down. The Warren Tribune bought the Youngstown
Oh,
Vindicator, and then they
okay.
shut their press down, and now they're going to Newark to get their paper printed. This is
Mm.
crazy. The News Herald, their papers, their printing presses. You got printing presses just sitting in buildings now that folks are either leaving them there or they're now scrapped. And we just don't have that same mechanism that we did before. And it's needed more now than ever before. Democracy is being affected because we just don't have the ability to concentrate information in the minds of our people in one community. We got to do that if we're going to increase the voter turnout, if we're going to have a more educated voter, if we're going to have a more educated elected official. You got to have an elected official who comes from an educated voter base. And if the voter base isn't educated, then you're going to have dummies voting and dummies running for office, what you got right now.
Brown on Cleveland. That's EJB. I kid you not. But the other thing I'll say is this about print. This is the reason why we're so interchangeable. We only print during political season is because we want to make sure that our method, our mechanism, our tool, the Brown Report newspaper, gets to voters. This is the reason why we take our papers door to door. So we
See that?
make sure that our papers are not sitting somewhere in somebody's store collecting dust. But I will agree that education matters, and it's a shame today that people have dummied down. And I know people get offended when I say this, but I'll say it again: is the thing that bothers me most, Brewer, is those endorsement cards because it takes away, to me, your voting rights. If somebody give you a cheat sheet, are you really voting or are you copying something? You're copying. You're not thinking. You're not researching. You're not analyzing. You're not making any type of assessments about the individual. You're just taking a card, a cheat sheet that you got. And normally, when you were in school, if you had a cheat sheet, what would happen?
Please, you couldn't have a cheat sheet in school. You know, and you say that because
Brown
think
on
about
Cleveland.
I was born in 1953 and I attended Webster Elementary School in
Hmm.
East St. Louis from the first through the 8th grade. I had 4 Negro female teachers from the
Okay.
first to the fourth and 4 Negro male teachers from the fifth through the eighth. When our school board wanted to grade us on the curve, our teachers met with our parents and they said, we do not teach Negro children that way. An A in Negro schools is a score of 95 to 100.
Hmm.
Anything less will demean the race. When we got to Cleveland in 69, they were grading on the curve. My siblings and I said, damn, they're demeaning the race. And you can see people now where they think, okay, an A was 95 to 100. That was the standard that we were raised under. And that's how we went from 0% literate in 1865 after slavery to 98.3% literate in 1970, 105 years after slavery. And we didn't speak Ebonics. We spoke perfect, eloquent English. We
Brown
weren't
on
ignorant.
Cleveland.
You couldn't keep something from us if you put it in a book because we can read the damn book.
Isn't
We're
that
not there
something?
anymore. We don't have that pride anymore. We don't have that racial consciousness anymore. We don't think of ourselves on an elevated plane like George Washington Carver. We don't see that as a model, patterning ourselves after a man who could figure out 326 ways to use a peanut that every other race of people could only eat and 120 ways to use a sweet potato. We got folks calling themselves the most despicable, degrading terms that you can think of, and they are embracing that consciousness and low rating us. I'm a trumpet player. I learned how to play at 9 years old. I read music starting off. I read music now. I see people today with the Shaw High Band, they don't even know how to read music because the music instructor didn't know how to read music. They can play by ear, but they can't play by music. They'll never work for the symphony orchestra. They'll never play on a stage band with a famous artist or a famous group. They'll never be on a show like Johnny Carson or whatever those shows was in the band, where you had people in the band that were actually musicians, outstanding musicians. Now we got beatbox artists. All of that crap is degrading. Those aren't musicians. Those aren't talented people. And I'm not
Brown
on them, but
on
not
Cleveland.
elevating us. We're not being
Brown on Cleveland. And it's kind of funny because we're going to wrap this thing up. You and I had a brief conversation about the concept of reporters and journalists, and we were talking about how some people can just take a microphone and talk, and they have no thought process behind it, but they can't write a structured sentence. They don't know how to do research. They can't do cross comparison analysis, but yet and still they are deemed as journalists. And to some journalists who are skilled, it's pretty much an insult that you walk around here and you say that you're part of the media. Me, myself, I graduated from the Ohio School of Broadcasting under Durrell Scott Wright. You should know Durrell.
I know,
He used
Daryl.
to work at WDOK 102.1 FM. And he was the most, well, he was so anal as a professor, just strictly anal, but his standards were so freaking high. And people have not even gone through that process. And I think what has happened now is that we are so accepting of anything. And it's because people walk around with all these soft feelings, just soft. If Eric Brewer is my teacher, and if he says something to me that's so right, but I don't like his tone, my feelings are hurt. So I don't want to go to class anymore, school anymore. And people allow that to happen.
That's exactly
They
right.
do. It's like our children. We had this conversation about people who sit in seats, political seats, for a lifetime. And I look at it as if you don't want to graduate from first grade.
Thank you.
Most people want their kids to graduate from kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, so on and so forth. Who wants to be stuck in the first grade, right? Well, little Nook Nook who can't put his shoes on the right feet. And then we got little Nook Nook sitting in city council, and
Yep.
then we don't understand why our neighborhoods look the way they look, because Nook Nook don't want to get out of first grade. Nook Nook always want to be a city council member until the day he dies, be it 40, 50, or 60 years. And you wonder why you're no longer relatable to the community. Brown on Cleveland, time to wrap this thing up. You say what, Eric? Because we can talk all night. Brown, brown, brown. People say this, that damn Brown on Cleveland. I know they don't like me, and they don't like you either, but that's what we have in common. Brown.
So I think that people love us, Kim. I don't think
Oh,
that dislike us. I think that people love us. They respect us. I think that God smiles on us because we're truth
yeah.
tellers. And I think that those are the people that the public gravitates towards. I found that in my life that the only people that don't like us are the ones that we are exposing. I'm okay if Brandon King doesn't like me for going to the Ohio Ethics Commission and asking them, when are you going to enforce your 3 illegal opinions that he can't lease office space to the city? And if he got
Okay.
indicted because of that, so be it. You shouldn't have been stealing from my people. That's how I feel about it. You should have treated my people better. You should have had better cops. You should have had a better sense of ethics. You should have brought better lawyers to the city who would protect their civil rights instead of participating with these scumbags that you brought around our people to disrespect them, shoot them, rob them, beat them, kill them. No, get away from our people. And if you're going to jail, thank you, FBI. Get that scum out of here.
You know what, Eric? It's always a pleasure and a joy speaking with you. You see my jaws hurt.
Just
Listen,
having fun, Kim.
I know, listen, we got to wrap this thing up, King. So please, please give me your closing remarks. And you know what? I said 60 seconds. Close it out for me in 2 minutes. And let's get up out of here because I got to go to work in the morning. Brown on Cleveland.
Well, I got to go to bed. I am old. Uh, I can say this, that I love Cleveland. I love the people of Cleveland, and I just want people to be better people, to elevate themselves, to take the citizenship seriously. We've invested a lot. Our ancestors invested a lot, and we need to respect what was contributed to this country that we have inherited that makes it ours. And I want us to love it just like our country can love us back. We got to be that. We got to be about that. We got to be strong patriots, and we got to get our people out and get them educated in the
Yes.
streets, voting, and making good, smart decisions every time they go to the polls.
Thank you so much. And I appreciate you coming inside the Little Hut podcast where most people fear. For some reason, I thought you was going to stand me up tonight because I knew you were scared of Brown on Cleveland. You
Oh,
just
come
trying to
on
be
now.
tough now.
I'm proud of you, Kim. So when you call, I'm coming, okay?
Amen. Listen, you guys have just been connected to Brown, 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 Simply Brown on Cleveland. But listen, don't forget, tune in Friday at 10 p.m. because it's going to be epic. We'll have Council President Latif Shabazz or Shabazz. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. No
Shabazz.
disrespect. What is it?
Shabazz.
Shabazz. We're
Yeah.
going to have him here 10 p.m. He's going to talk to us. It's just a simple discussion. No right or wrong, but I do have some questions for him. So, hey, you guys know me, right? Brown on Cleveland. As I say each and every podcast, I know you don't like me, but 10 times out of 10, I don't like you either. And that's what we have in common. But listen, if you need me, call me. Don't talk about me because Eric, I'll talk about him back. And that is a fact. And I'll go on attack. So listen, Brown, 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 Simply Brown on Cleveland. You guys have a great evening. Say goodbye, Eric.
Bye. Love you all.
All right, you guys.